Imagine going to the hardware store to, buy a laser measure because the corner of your bedroom has suddenly sprouted a fifth dimension.
Right.
There are no ghosts, no aliens dropping from the ceiling. It's just, math.
Just math.
Yeah, a terrifying but very polite geometrical anomaly just hanging out in the northwest quadrant of your ceiling.
I mean, that is a wildly specific and strangely hilarious errand to run while you're experiencing a complete mental collapse.
Totally.
It completely reframes the entire concept of survival instincts,
Yeah.
Like you were not running from a predator. You were trying to cross-reference reality against a Bosch return policy.
Exactly. And that bizarre scenario is exactly the premise we are digging into today. Welcome to the deep dive. We are thrilled you're here with us because, well, the stack of sources we are unpacking today is completely unique.
It really is.
Yeah, we aren't looking at news articles or dry scientific journals today. We actually have our hands on a collection of 3 distinct, agonizingly thorough, and honestly incredibly witty peer reviews.
Though the reviewers themselves proudly call them roasts.
Right, roasts of an unpublished manuscript.
So this manuscript is a novel titled The Proof, and it operates as a psychological and mathematical horror story.
Yeah.
But as you hinted at with that hardware store run, the antagonist isn't some demon or monster. The monster in this book is just its geometry itself.
Which sounds completely absurd.
Oh, 100%.
Until you really dive into the mechanics of what these reviewers are analyzing. So our mission today is to explore this manuscript through the lens of these brilliant roasts. We really want to figure out how an abstract mathematical concept can literally break a person's reality.
Yes.
And even more impressively, how a narrative can be engineered to make you, the reader, experience that exact same breakdown in real time.
Right, because to understand how the book manipulates the reader, we first have to, examine the catalyst for the protagonist's descent. The story follows Marcus Webb, who is a mathematician who successfully completes a proof that fundamentally shatters his understanding of the universe.
He doesn't get, superpowers or anything.
No superpowers.
Mm.
He doesn't commune with a higher intelligence. The actual consequence of his discovery is just that he begins to perceive a fifth corner in his standard 4-cornered bedroom.
And the reviewers are very quick to note that this premise hovers dangerously close to a massive literary cliche.
Oh, absolutely.
We have all seen the mad mathematician trope in pop culture, right?
Right, the genius who pushes the boundaries of human knowledge.
He stops sleeping, alienates his entire family.
Starts seeing the fabric of the cosmos bleeding through the drywall.
Exactly. One of the reviewers actually jokes that if Marcus starts drilling into his own skull to relieve the pressure of the numbers, they're going to need a copyright lawyer on standby.
It's a very well-worn path.
Yeah.
But the consensus across all our sources is that the trope works brilliantly here because the haunting is so fiercely mundane.
Yeah.
Most protagonists dealing with higher dimensional entities get, dragged into a cosmic void by some eldritch horror.
Yeah.
Marcus just gets a slightly irregular shadow.
Okay, let's unpack this because I love that detail so much. It's the architectural equivalent of being haunted by a polite but totally incompetent interior designer.
That is exactly what it is.
There are no jump scares. It's just a persistent spatial impossibility. And his reaction, grabbing the laser measure, is peak academic behavior.
It really is.
He is battling a tear in the fabric of space-time, and his first instinct is to try and quantify it.
Which is a deeply tragic defense mechanism when you look closely at it.
Check that.
The reviewers highlight a supporting character, Sarah Chen, who delivers this line that just grounds the entire psychological terror of the book. She tells Marcus, models are not the same as the things they model.
Oh, wow. Yeah, let's sit with the weight of that statement because it shifts the story from a cheap ghost tale to something with genuine epistemic weight.
Definitely.
When we navigate the world, we aren't actually experiencing objective reality. Our brains are just constructing a 3-dimensional model based on sensory inputs. And we rely on that model to keep us alive. The map is not the territory, but if your internal map insists there is a cliff in your living room, you are still going to fall over trying to avoid it.
What's fascinating here is that this is where the profound, non-dual tension of the story lives. The terror isn't that Marcus is hallucinating. The terror is the agonizing gap between his intellect and his biology.
Oh, that's such a good way to put it.
Right. He possesses a brain that can mathematically, logically deduce a higher reality, like a folded multidimensional spacetime. His math is totally flawless.
But his body isn't.
Exactly. He inhabits a biological primate body that simply cannot survive experiencing it. His visual cortex is trying to render a five-dimensional truth using three-dimensional hardware.
And it's catastrophically short-circuiting.
Yeah, completely.
He's a biological creature attempting to inhabit a mathematical absolute. And that systemic failure brings us to the actual architecture of the novel itself, because the reviewers agree that the true brilliance of the proof is that it refuses to just passively describe Marcus losing his mind.
Right, it doesn't just tell you about it.
It forces the reader into his exact cognitive dissonance. The form actively mirrors the content.
Yeah, the sources describe the book's overarching structure as a strange loop. And mathematically and philosophically, a strange loop is a hierarchical system where, by moving upwards or downwards through the levels, you just unexpectedly find yourself right back where you started.
And the narrative application of this is fascinating. The book opens mid-sentence. The very first line of chapter 1 is, "I have counted the corners of my room, and there are 4 corners."
That's the great hook.
It is. And then you read hundreds of pages watching Marcus struggle, recover, and relapse. Then part 4 ends with that exact same sentence.
And then you hit an editorial note on the next page explaining that the opening chapter you read was actually an appendix documenting his future relapse.
Mind-blowing.
The entire book is a temporal fold. The narrative literally takes the shape of the mathematical proof Marcus is obsessing over.
And the reviewers point out that the authors are almost aggressively self-aware about this structural choice. Like, they even created a character just to wink at the audience.
Oh, Dr. Hofstadter.
Yeah, Dr. Yale Hofstadter. This mysterious woman in Vienna who wears a rumpled jacket, constantly drinks coffee, and acts as a sort of mathematical Cassandra. She plants the seed of the proof in Marcus's mind and then conveniently vanishes.
And her surname is a glaring, deliberate homage to Douglas Hofstadter.
The real-world author.
Right, the author of Gödel, Escher, Bach. That book is basically the seminal text on strange loops and self-reference. The authors of the proof go so far as to include Hofstadter's actual book in their fictional glossary.
That is so bold.
They want to ensure the reader understands the exact theoretical framework trapping the protagonist.
But the structural obsession goes so much deeper than clever references and cyclical chapters. It bleeds all the way down into the fundamental grammar of the prose. The sources actually refer to this technique as mood as syntax.
This is where the literary craftsmanship is really put under the microscope by these roasts. The reviewers trace how the grammar physically deteriorates in tandem with Marcus's mental fractures.
Like it's breaking down with him.
Exactly. When his mind slips toward the fifth corner, the prose becomes violently fragmented. Sentences stop, stall, and restart. The reviews quote a section where the text just repeats phrases like prevents. Prevents what? The psychological pressure isn't just described, it is embedded into the rhythm of the words.
And then when he stabilizes, the sentences stretch out, becoming lyrical and flowing. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because I really have to push back on the structural perfection, and honestly, the reviewers raise the same flag. If I am reading a psychological thriller, and the syntax deliberately breaks every single time he has an episode, doesn't the machine become too visible?
I see what you mean.
Right. By the third breakdown, I know exactly what the author's doing. A completely predictable formula for madness seems like it would rob the narrative of its surprise. Like, if the chaos has a rigid set of rules, it stops feeling chaotic.
That is a crucial critique.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the authors themselves acknowledged this limitation in an internal draft note that got cited by the reviewers.
Really? They knew?
They did. They admit, quote, "The machine is visible. The proof shows its steps. But we have to analyze why they maintain that visibility. The predictable structure isn't a failure of imagination. It is an intimate reflection of Marcus's coping mechanism.
Oh, wow.
The book itself is obsessively compulsive.
So the prose is mirroring his pedantic attempts to anchor himself. He's clinging to the rules of grammar because his grasp on the physical rules of space is gone.
Precisely. Imagine holding onto a frayed rope over a canyon. You don't care that the rope is ugly, you just care that it holds.
Yeah.
Marcus needs the rules of syntax to be visible, rigid, and predictable, because without them, he falls into the fifth corner. The predictability you noticed is a symptom of his desperation.
That reframes the pacing entirely. It's not just a parlor trick, it's a survival tactic.
Exactly.
So once your mind has been fractured by a strange loop, your grammar is stuttering, and you are staring at a 5-dimensional shadow over your bed. Where do you go for help? You don't call an exorcist.
No, you go to a church basement on Clement Street.
Yes. This is hands down the most delightful detail in the entire stack of sources. There is a support group operating out of St. Augustine's specifically for physicists and mathematicians suffering from epistemological crises.
It's a phenomenally specific concept,
Yeah.
and it just perfectly highlights the absurdity of the academic condition.
I started calling it Topology Anonymous while going through the notes.
It is perfect.
Right. Because the concept of topology is essentially the study of geometric properties that are preserved when an object is continuously stretched or deformed. To a topologist, a donut and a coffee mug are the exact same shape.
Because they both have exactly one hole.
Yes. You can mold one into the other without tearing the material. Now imagine a group of brilliant minds sitting in folding chairs, drinking bad coffee, and one of them is having a panic attack because he can no longer neurologically distinguish his pastry from his cup.
Which is terrifying, but also so funny.
The reviewers literally highlight a character pleading, "Don't look at the donuts, they trigger my relapse."
The humor is a fantastic release valve. But the underlying trauma bonding is deeply poignant. You have these characters like Gregory, Anna, and Jorge, all struggling to verify if their physical perceptions align with reality.
Yeah.
And Gregory's profound advice to Marcus isn't some complex equation. He just says, look away. When the geometry starts shifting, refuse to engage.
And the anchor of this group is the psychiatrist, Dr. Reyes, because he doesn't dismiss their mathematics as mere delusion.
Not at all. Dr. Reyes offers a beautiful, haunting diagnostic definition of what the fifth corner actually is. He tells Marcus it is the categories becoming too full, the boundary between thinking and seeing becoming thin.
The boundary between thinking and seeing becoming thin. That is such a heavy concept.
It really is.
Our brains rely on rigid categories to function, like a wall is a boundary, a door is an exit. If you study theoretical physics long enough, you understand that a wall is mostly empty space and a cloud of probability.
Right.
But if that thought bleeds over into your visual cortex, if the category of wall becomes too full of data, it stops functioning as a boundary. You start seeing the probability instead of the plaster.
And Dr. Reyes points to Marcus's own reaction as clinical evidence for this. When Reyes proposes this definition, Marcus doesn't violently reject it. Deep down, the mathematician knows the diagnosis fits the variables.
So what does this all mean? Like, is this truly how mental health recovery operates? You find a handful of sympathetic math nerds in a basement, a highly perceptive therapist, and suddenly your epistemological dread is cured.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that brings us to the harshest, most unified critique across all three roasts. The reviewers argue that the support system in this novel is suspiciously, impossibly perfect. It is totally unroastable, which ironically makes it entirely unrealistic.
Because everyone says the exact right thing at the exact right moment.
Exactly. His academic colleague is endlessly gentle and persistent. His sister intuitively knows when to make impasta and exactly what questions to avoid.
Yeah, that doesn't happen in real life.
No. And Dr. Reyes manages to resolve the central existential agony of the novel in a matter of sessions. Nobody is dismissive. Nobody misinterprets Marcus's rambling and accidentally causes him more harm.
Because anyone who has ever navigated a severe mental health crisis or supported someone through one knows that the process is incredibly messy.
So messy.
People get exhausted, friends say the wrong things, the system fails you.
And reviewers astutely point out that this utopian support system actually exposes the author's underlying vulnerability. They prioritized a comforting narrative resolution over epistemological honesty.
Ah, I see.
The trauma of losing one's mind is terrifying and isolating, and the author simply couldn't stomach leaving the protagonist in the dark. So they shaped the recovery into how we wish mental health care worked, rather than how it actually functions.
They built him the ultimate safety net because letting him drown in the math was just too bleak of an ending. And that intense desire for a comforting resolution leads us directly to the climax of the book. Because the ultimate weapon deployed against cosmic, multidimensional dread isn't a grand, unified theory of everything.
No, it's not. The final, grounding thesis of the novel is condensed into a single sentence. Most mornings he counts 4 corners and makes coffee.
The crushing weight of Einsteinian space-time and higher dimensional reality is utterly defeated by the mundane ritual of a French press.
It forces a massive perspective shift. The climax isn't a victory over the fifth corner. It is the quiet, ongoing choice to simply engage with the ordinary world, to make the coffee.
Yeah.
And the novel punctuates this by breaking the fourth wall. The final line is a direct address to the reader, "Good morning."
The man who spent 2 years locked in his room, terrified of the ceiling, is finally turning outward to greet us. It is small, It is deeply intimate, and all three reviewers agree the emotional payoff is completely earned.
It is. Yet, the roasts also note that the authors couldn't just let that silence linger.
I actually laughed out loud reading this section of the critique. The reviewers call it the Diogenes problem.
Yes.
The authors landed this perfect, minimalist ending, good morning, fade to black, but they couldn't leave well enough alone. They felt compelled to add a heavily over-explained annotation right on the copyright page.
They explicitly stated that the fear of the folding room and the defiant act of making coffee belongs to everyone who has ever counted carefully and found the wrong number, which is to say, to everyone.
They annotated the subtext.
They did.
They were so terrified the reader might miss the universal metaphor of the fifth corner that they spelled it out in the legal front matter of the book. It is such an endearingly neurotic, authorial choice.
It really reveals their own anxiety. But this raises an important question, a profound philosophical dilemma that serves as the core takeaway of the novel. Did Marcus actually achieve wisdom by returning to his coffee routine? Or did he suffer a tragic loss of perception?
That is the real lingering horror, isn't it?
It is. I mean, he is functioning in society again. The fifth corner is gone from his sight. But the narrative earns its lasting power by never definitively confirming if the room actually possessed four corners all along, or if Marcus merely forced himself to perceive four corners as a survival mechanism.
He accepts the four corners with effort, on the good days. But did he cure a delusion, or did he deliberately blind himself to a higher universal truth just so he could be normal?
Exactly. If the underlying truth of reality is 5 dimensions, but your biological form can only survive in 4, then functioning requires a level of chosen ignorance.
Bringing this all back to you listening, this isn't just about abstract geometry. We navigate a world overflowing with complex, contradictory, and often reality-shifting information. We all have our own metaphorical corners that don't quite add up.
Definitely.
We experience our own strange loops of anxiety, realizing the systems we rely on are flawed or collapsing. And the proof, despite its mathematical obsession and deteriorating syntax, serves as a really grounded reminder. When the overwhelming weight of the universe presses down, sometimes the bravest, most necessary act isn't solving the impossible equation. It is simply choosing the ordinary. It is getting up and making the coffee.
I will leave you with this final thought to mull over as you go about your day. If you were to genuinely perceive a terrifying, higher dimensional truth about our reality, something that fundamentally broke your understanding of the universe, would you actually want a cure that forces you to unsee it? Or is it a deeper tragedy to force a mind that has finally comprehended 5 corners to forever live confined in a 4-cornered room?
That is the exact question that will be keeping me up tonight. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration into the architecture of madness. Wherever you are, I hope you go enjoy a very ordinary, very grounded cup of coffee. We will catch you on the next deep dive.